Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Aditya here. In today's video, we are diving into how you can monetize your APIs using AWS API Gateways usage plan and API keys. We will cover everything from setting up usage plans to managing API keys and ensuring that your API is secure and scalable. Let's jump right in. And one more note here is this is a theory session and this is good to have session. That's why I'm keeping here. Okay. So what exactly are usage plans in API gateway? Okay. So if you are offering your API as service to customers, especially in a monetized environment, usage plans are crucial. So if you want to monetize your APIs to earn some amount from the APIs, then usage plans are crucial. Okay, so by using these usage plans, those will allow us to right control who can access your APIs. So it will give privileges to only few people. For example, who is subscribed to your API, those people only able to access your APIs. So like that it will add that control, and also it will define how much and how fast they can access, right? So how much means how many requests they can make, and how fast means simultaneously how many requests they can make. There is difference between those two. Okay, those things we can define in this usage plans. In essence, usage plans let you manage your API access by linking API keys to specific API stages and methods. Don't get overwhelmed here. Simple, you need usage plans to monetize your API simply. Okay, and by using usage plans and using API keys, right? And these API keys will be attached to API stages, API gateway stages, so that right only the users who has these API keys under the usage plan can able to access your API gateway APIs. So that is what it means. Okay, so you can control that, you can manage that access. Okay, and with respect to usage plans, right, inside the usage plans you can have this throttling and quota limits, so you can set this. Okay, so these are enforcing, right, you are enforcing these throttling and quota limits. So first we'll understand what is throttling limits. Control the rate at which your clients can make API requests, preventing your API from being overloaded or overwhelmed. So that means here you can control the API request. For example, simultaneously your clients are hitting your API. One client is hitting your API simultaneously with 1,000 times, right? Then you can set the throttling limit because 1,000 requests simultaneously hitting your backend. Sometimes your backend service will fail, right? If you don't follow the proper scalable features or anyway, it is a load on your backend, right? So to limit that load, you can specify this throttling limit, and also one more limit is the quota limits. So you can set maximum number of requests a client can make over a specific period of time. Okay, so quota is like he can make, for example, 10,000 requests in 24 hours. If he make more than 10,000 requests in 24 hours, then you won't send any response or you will fail the response with quota limit breached, right? And that is the difference between the throttling limits and quota limits. And these limits ensures that your API resources are used effectively and efficiently and fairly by all the clients. So if one client is making more than 10,000 simultaneous API requests, right, the other client won't get the response. So that's why adding these limits to your API on top of your API on top of your API using usage plans will be helpful for you. Okay, and moving on to the next topic, that is understanding API keys. Okay, now let's talk about API keys. An API key is nothing but it's an alphanumerical string like this. So you can observe this is an API key, and if you see it's an alphanumerical string, and this string you can distribute to your customers. These keys are used to for identifying and authenticating API clients. So for example, you have given your API to your clients, and whoever knows the endpoints, they can able to access your API, right? But to limit that, if you provide this API key as an prerequisite for authorizing, right, then they will give this API key. So the clients with only this API key able to access your API. So here you are, what you are doing, you are identifying and authenticating the API clients. And second thing is you can track and meter API usage. Definitely for each user you will give different API keys, and you can see how which user is, so you can track and meter API usage under the corresponding usage plans. So by using these API keys, right, you can track one particular API got these many hits, right? All this related information you can track by using these API keys under usage plans. Okay, so when a client makes a request to your API, then they need to include this API key in their X API header. So if the clients are making request to our API, for example, we have given our API documentation to clients, and clients are trying to hit our API, then they have to send this API key, right? In this particular API key, in the header, right, you have to add this X hyphen API hyphen key. So here it's a typo hyphen, there will be a key. So X hyphen API hyphen key, with this API key, if they send a request, then only we can able to send back them the response. Okay, that's the advantage of API keys. Now we'll see how to set up a usage plan and API keys. Okay, so let's walk through the correct order to set up a usage plan. So first thing what you have to do is you have to create your APIs. So start by creating one or more APIs in your API gateway and configure methods to require an API key. So inside that you have to configure a method, right? In that method you have to mention the API key related validation and deploy these APIs to desired state. Okay, that is the first step. What is that? You have to create your APIs and configure it properly. And the second one is generate API keys. Okay, you have to generate the API keys. So once your APIs are ready, right, you have to generate, or if you have already API keys available, import those API keys. And these keys will be distributed to your customers or the developers who will be using your API. By using this API keys only, they can able to access the API. Since we have already configured our APIs with API keys and we generated or imported those things into APIs, so fine, right? And finally, the third step is create the usage plan here. So now create a usage plan with the desired throttling and quota limits. So as we discussed in the previous slide, inside the usage plan, we can define two types of limits, that is throttling and quota limits. So create it and define those limits. And finally, the important step is you have to associate your API stages and API keys with the usage plan. So once you created the usage plan, right, you have to associate your APIs. So you have your APIs and you have to mention that these APIs should use these API keys in the usage plan. So create a usage plan. Inside the usage plan, you use these two resources. Okay. So here what we are saying, these APIs should use these API keys, and clients with only these API keys can able to access the APIs. So that is what we are association. So without association, whatever you created these three steps, right, those won't work. So that is very important. Okay. So I hope I understand how to set up usage plans and API keys. And moving on to the next slide, that is using API keys in requests. So now you have an usage plan. In that usage plan, you have already defined some APIs and you attached API keys to those APIs, and only the users who are accessing your APIs, they should provide the API keys. But how they can provide an API key, we'll see now. So to successfully call your API, client must include their assigned API key in the X hyphen API key header. So they have to include this particular X hyphen API key, this is key, and the value should be the alphanumerical string which I have shown in the previous slide. That alphanumerical key you have to provide in this key, X hyphen API hyphen key, in the header section. Okay, without this key the request will be rejected, ensuring that only authorized users can access your API. Okay, so if you fail to provide this API key and you define your users plan with some API keys, then obviously it will fail. Only authorized clients can access the API, otherwise it will fail or it will reject it. Finally, in the conclusion, usage plans and API keys in API gateway give you the tools to manage, monetize, and secure our APIs. So what we can do is we can manage, obviously, by using API gateway stages, and you can monetize by using the usage plans, and you can secure by using the API keys. So all these things available on the API gateway, and these are we are doing very effectively, right? And by understanding how to set up and configure these features, you can ensure that your API is both accessible and protected, while also providing the value to the customers. So we enabled the accessibility and production, and also we providing this value to the customers. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights on AWS services, tricks, and tips. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.